We've been seeing a lot of pundits lately rolling out their nationwide research proclaiming that the number one reason people want to listen to the radio is because it's free. And they suggest wrapping your entire marketing campaign around that concept. We frankly call BS on that. And we'll discuss that next. Lee, it's free. Is that the reason that you think that radio stations can boost their ratings if they hang their hat on that as a marketing concept to get people in the door and expand their ratings by a tenth of a point or more?
I think it's why people recognize that broadcast radio is free. But I don't know that that's going to get a lot of people coming in the door in 2024.
We do national studies of listeners all the time, and we'll have results that may track very similarly to the other webinars you've been exposed to this year with the pundits that claim to have all the answers. But we like to take a deeper dive into the data and show you the segment that truly matters. And that's what this is going to be all about, because the motivations between the segment that gives you the report card every month and the general US population, well, they're very different. Right. So Lee, let's discuss the most recent ratings prospect study, our 24th.
Right. RPS 24, almost 3,200 respondents, 14 to 64. We added 10 years to the top of our sample for the first time. We wanted to make sure we had all the Gen Xers. And by the way, it was an opportunity to get at least the last 5 years of the baby boom in there, 50-50 male, female. So when you get to the generational breakout, we have almost all of Gen Z, at least those over 13, counts for a little more than a quarter of the sample. Almost a third are millennials, then Gen X at 31%. And then that last 5 years of baby boomers comprise 10%. Nationwide sample. In the field, very tippy end of May, the first day of June of this year. So a little bit earlier before the summer technically began, but in most parts of the country, it felt like summer already.
Yeah, a few clients have decided to test 35-64 because they're getting a little bit of business that involves 55 to 64-year-olds, like from financial services and so forth.
Sure.
All right, the segmentation is really critical. And I would argue that the pundits that recommend embracing the idea of radio is free are missing the point, because it's not the group that's going to be accretive to the ratings report card.
Right. So it's a sample of almost 3,200 people. But when you boil down who are the people who are likely to participate in the ratings, be it People Meter or a diary, the number gets smaller. We've been using this set of questions now for over 10 years, and we adjust the amounts involved that we know that Nielsen is offering. But when you get right down to it, the number is starting to go down. It held at about 20% for a long time. Now we're down in the 15% range. So we're showing a decline. And some of that, I think, is if you're a little bit less close to radio, if that's less a part of your life, you're less likely to participate in a study that Nielsen will tell you is about your TV viewing or radio listening. So maybe fewer people are interested in that for the rewards that are involved. But then I'll say the segment to pay closest attention to is among that group of people who are likely to participate in the ratings. Among that group, how many of those are heavy listeners to the medium? We call them the RPS heavies. They're likely to participate in the ratings, and they report listening to broadcast radio an hour or more a day, or an hour more a day.
And what is I forgot to ask you, what is the percentage these days? Is it kind of maintained despite the fact that the overall universe of RPS opt-ins has shrunk, or has it come down a little bit as well?
It's down as well. We're just a hair over 5% at this point. So
wow,
it's not a big group. It's roughly 1 in 20. So,
and this isn't the first study where that number has come down. It came down just a tiny bit in January, I think, from 8 to 7, and so now, but this is a big drop.
Yep, this is a big drop. So,
okay, so we're going to need to let's frame the question before I show the total sample results, because this is all about motivations, a number of different reasons that people say they'll still listen to terrestrial FM AM radio.
So we gave them a big panel what are the top 3 reasons that you listen to broadcast radio? It's
Yep.
that simple. You can click up to 3 of those. Everybody does. I think the number actually comes up to 2.7. Some people are like, it's those 2 things. That's the
Got it. Okay, so it doesn't have to be 3. It could be up.
Doesn't have to be 3. But when you can show the data.
Yeah, I think what we're saying is this is the percentages of people who have these attributes in their top 3.
Right. Free.
There it is.
Rise to the top.
It's free. Yep. Okay, let's go. Presentation over. Let's go redo all of our liners. Why pay $10 or $20 a month for Netflix when you can get radio free?
Right. So
laser shot.
Right behind that, to know what's going on locally. Yeah, sure. I'd bundle a couple of those beneath it to get in a better mood. Keeps you company, companionship, mood improvement, just a habit. Only thing I can listen to in a car or truck. That's down to 18% of the sample, because as newer vehicles get included in the fleet, they aren't limited to radios. That you aren't just going to listen to broadcast radio in the car or truck because it's the only thing available. The walled garden is the walls are down, I guess is the nice way to say it. Keep up on news, weather, traffic. It's all in there too. 14% feel connected to a station or DJ or specific host. Traffic reports mention sports. It's 12%. It's a lot higher among men than it is among women. You realize that. Commercials tell me about businesses in my area. That's getting down to small percentages because nothing bigger than 5% appears here. And just the list goes down beneath what we can fit onto this screen.
Yep. So results that every pundit gets when they look at their nationwide sample of a few thousand people. And I'd argue that their research is probably good. But where they fail is to understand that it's 95% of the population under 65 and above 13 doesn't matter when it comes time to printing out your numbers for your sales packages.
Right. Because the thing that really is going to matter, the people who can move the meter, are the RPS heavies, the people who are likely to be within the rating sample and listen to broadcast radio at least an hour a day. And among that group, things get tossed around. If you were looking for free, that's actually mid-page at 21%. Mood enhancement. Yeah, it's not terrible, but mood enhancement, companionship, those are up at the top. To know what's going on locally, that connection to a DJ or host. And then, yes, people still at least tell us that news, weather, traffic, sports, those things are important to them on the radio. In some cases, I think it just reassures people that, because most of us walk out of the house having a pretty good idea of what the traffic is likely to be on our route wherever we're going before we get in the car. But having the radio traffic report available is somebody to commiserate with when it doesn't go the way you thought it was.
And I think reminders are, especially if you traffic in that type of content, maybe if that's part of your brand, to not incorporate that in external marketing is a mistake. Because listen, I live in Texas. And I live a little north of and west of where this happened. But in Houston, they got whacked by another hurricane. They lost power in a lot of places for days and days. And there was somebody who finally got on Twitter, X, and complained about the fact that there was no media outlet that they could count on because their electricity and internet was out. To get any kind of emergency information like weather and, whether the roads were open and so forth. And then somebody snarkily replied, "It's called radio." Which can be a problem because sometimes, you get that transistor radio out, the voice tracking machine continues to play.
Right. I remember hearing stories about from people in Kentucky after an outbreak of tornadoes there, where in the height of it, instead of providing vital weather information, there were stations just on autopilot with another 7 in a row, so you can listen longer.
But I would argue the commodity aspects of radio listening or radio listening motivations, there are things you can't do anything about. I don't think liners and promos about how, hey, it's the only thing you can get in your truck, so you're stuck with us. So keep tuning in.
It's free.
Right. It's free. It's free. That's not going to work. It's the emotion is what makes for successful marketing.
Right.
And so this kind of next breakout, we wanted to kind of look at the differential. In other words, we wanted to rank the top attributes that were that the RPS heavies embraced that were a multiple of the total sample. So in other words, where were the biggest positive divergences? Because this might lead us to where we could focus to really move the needle from a branding or tactical perspective to boost ratings. And so it bubbles up to the top because there's not that big a difference between, a lot of these attributes, 18, 20, 25%. We're all within the ball game.
Right. But as you have on the slide here, the RPS heavies are better than twice as likely to prioritize listening to win prizes.
Yep.
Compared to the total sample.
So it takes on a little bit more of an importance, and that is something you can control.
Right. And we know from experience, any of us who've served in the trenches know that contests are one thing that just seem to work a little better than they ought to.
Yeah.
Because the numbers on, I listen to win prizes, 8% overall.
And you've actually just authored an article that discusses how to optimize contest cash, which you can get at newvoodoo.com. And I think one of the things is I don't think there's an argument in this country about how much more expensive it is to live in this country. And so suddenly the contest prizing kind of takes on a new life.
Yeah. I mean, we've been able to correlate contest prize interest with just how the economy is doing.
Yeah.
And while some would tell you the economy is doing great, maybe for some, but most of us don't feel like we're feeling a great economy. So
Right.
Suddenly, that contest prize could help, even if it's not a lot of money. It might not change my life, but it make me feel good, a little extra cash. I've also written about the notion that right now with people having to cut back on certain aspects of their spending, the opportunity to do something nice for your listeners, have a family dinner night out at a local casual dining spot, have a host and your mascot there to welcome them, and a decent price, that could get a lot of appreciation, a lot of positive points for your brand.
Now, commercials are generally a bad thing. I mean, they're a necessary thing, but it's not something you're going to hang your hat on. But I would argue that there is a small constituency, especially among the people who listen to a lot of radio, that where the commercial content actually is important. They're listening for where that 2-for-1 family special is. And sometimes they don't get it all when they listen, they're in their car and they happen to hear it and they decide to contact the radio station and they get blown off.
Right. But it correlates perfectly, Mike, that if you're the sort of person who's willing to distort your behavior to try to win the $500 or $1,000 prize or the whatever they're giving away, you're also the person who's likely to try to be thinking about, how do I save 20% on my new roof? And you're right. People try to get in touch with radio stations often or have a question about the commercial that they heard that they didn't get all of.
Yep.
And it's so wise to make it easy for them. I know there are some great operators who keep track of, hey, you can click on our website. Here's where you can find out about things you've heard about on the radio station from our clients. So Really great best practice. And by the way, if a listener takes the time to try to get in touch because they had a question about a commercial, or they want to say, hey, way to go, love that song, or that was really funny this morning, or whatever it is. Oh my God, in 2024, it's worth so much to be able to respond to that, to make them feel like what they said or what they want to know matters to you.
Share with your staff that when an inbound unsolicited social media comment or email or phone call to voicemail hell comes into the radio station, that there's a almost 100% greater chance that is going to be not just a ratings respondent, but one with a lot of time on their hands for radio. They make or break your ratings.
Yep.
And I think this next one is really important because, let's face it, this is an opportunity to form emotional bonds.
Sure. And we scripted it here, feel connected to a station, DJ, or host. I mean, sometimes you don't know the name of the person who's on, but it's the familiar voice. And, or it's the branding of the station, the way it's put together, that gives off a vibe that a listener grows to rely upon. That it's just comfort. And it's incredibly important for this subset who are the ones who are actually likely to, forgive the pun, move the meter for you.
And then we did touch on the kind of the next two, but again, I think it's worth reinforcing that when there is an emergency in town, you got to have a plan so that your voice tracking isn't running.
Yeah, whatever the kind of emergencies that you can imagine, and be liberal about that, because these days all sorts of things happen that we weren't expecting. But you should have plans laid out and know what's going to happen, because otherwise, when it happens, you're running around in circles, maybe playing another 7 in a row so people can listen longer, when that's not what they're looking for.
It is the fall of Moneyball, and Lee, you've added some responsibilities. You're still helping clients execute perceptual studies and conducting our evolved version of what we used to call an auditory music test and regular evolved call out.
Right.
But you've now got the marketing hat on, and you are responsible for the team that knows how to go out and find these RPS heavies and turn them into ratings for our clients.
At surprisingly lower costs. I mean, I think back to when I sat in the PD chair and the kind of budgets that we blessedly had the opportunity to wield at that time. Nobody's got that anymore, but we can move a lot for a lot less money. And ultimately, from my perspective, it's all in the pursuit of trying to get that next 10th of a rating point.
More RPS 24 data available at newvoodoo.com/articles. And you can always reach Lee and his team directly at tellmemore@newvoodoo.com.
New Voodoo builds digital products and conducts research and marketing campaigns for clients.
It's easy to get in touch. Drop us a line at tellmemore@newvoodoo.com.